Welcome back, Curious Hearts. I'm Vera. Together, in every episode, we get to explore what it is we really believe, how we practice, and we get to meet people who are on their own spiritual path. Together, we begin. I give thanks for the full abundance of being born into this life, into this body, in this moment of being allowed and enabled to walk through this path just as I am. I am so grateful for all of the teachers and all of the great lineages of which I am honored to be a part. I have so much gratitude for all of those who've gone before me, both my spiritual ancestors and also my literal ancestors, the human beings who had to make incredible choices and sacrifices, who withstood an absolute barrage of history that I could never actually know, who made untold choices and mistakes and had happy and unhappy accidents and surprises, all of which allowed me to have the life that I have today. Welcome back, Curious Hearts. It's a timely episode, and I partly delayed recording it because I wanted this episode to drop for you on Thursday, on this annual day that we call Thanksgiving. Because the next practice we're exploring together is the practice of gratitude. Gratitude is an incredibly powerful force, both in our psychological and our physical life. And it is no accident that it has become one of the most archetypal spiritual practices across every tradition. Every tradition that I am aware of encourages, and it's not just a strong encouragement, it requires conscious and consistent, regular expressions of deep thanks for all of the gifts that we have received. So even if you aren't a particularly religious or even a spiritual person, you have probably said grace before a meal. Deep acknowledgement of, the hands and the work that was required for all of the gifts of the feast we are about to consume, right? And maybe if you don't do that every meal, you probably will do it at some point on Thursday. It's a complicated day in the United States because of the history of the day, and I'm not going to dismiss that, but I do want us to make some room because I actually think that's what gratitude does. I don't think that gratitude cures anything. Gratitude is not a magic balm or a magic bullet. And I say that as a person who tried so hard to make gratitude a magic bullet for me. I wanted gratitude to fix everything. I wanted my gratitude practice to completely transform my entire life. And in some ways, it has. Gratitude has the capacity to serve as a miracle, to allow us to change our perspective away from awareness about everything that's missing and everything that's wrong and all of the ways that we are screwing up, all of the ways we're behind. That gratitude has a sort of miraculous ability of shifting our perspective into the things that are going well, what we're good at, all of the gifts that we have received, all of the things that are going well or right in the world or in our life that are often hard for us to hold perspective on. I believe that's a very natural human thing. The human brain evolved. All animal brains evolved to maintain the species. And being thankful for what we already have is not a particularly useful survival skill. And yet, we have evolved this practice of gratitude, and it is something that has been consistently repeated and poured into and refined and explored across languages, across cultures, along spiritual practice, whether in industrialized or not industrialized cultures, just across the board. One of my favorite books about spiritual life, but specifically about prayer, is by the Saint Annie Lamott, and it's called Help, Thanks, Wow. And Lamott says that these are the three prayers, that every prayer, when it's boiled down, is one of those three. It is help, like, please, I don't know what's happening. I need help. I am suffering. I don't know what to do right now. I need help. Wow is stepping into the prayer of deep acknowledgement and awe of how extraordinary this life is and the world is. And thanks, that is the gratitude prayer. I'm not going to bore you with all the science on gratitude, but there's a lot of it. And I will probably link a couple of white papers in the show notes for this episode if you want to, dive in deep. A lot of research, both in the brain, like neurobiology, psychology, psychiatry, the study of affect, interpersonal psychology, sociology, social psychology, organizational psychology, all of those. Gratitude has made its way into fields that study people. And the science and the research that has happened is really interesting in terms of how a sensation, a feeling, not a thinking of gratitude, but a feeling of gratitude releases all sorts of, some suggestion that it releases oxytocin, which is that connection chemical, that it potentially has the opportunity to shift our brains. It influences our nervous system, right? If we're having trouble regulating our nervous system, if we're in fight or flight, that feeling a sense of gratitude will help to regulate us. It plays a role in relationships and community, and the list kind of goes on and on and on. And I think as a result of that, we've heard a barrage of gratitude. Give thanks, live, laugh, love, right? That gratitude has sort of lost its luster or has become almost jargony. And so when somebody says something to me, like to have an attitude of gratitude, I just, I have to keep my mouth shut most of the time, sit on my hands, smile and say thank you. But it's a saying thank you. It's not a feeling thank you, usually. And yet, we have to develop a practice. We have to find our own personal relationship with a gratitude practice that really works, because it's, I think, an essential spiritual practice for a couple of reasons. The first is that in order to feel grateful, we must acknowledge that we are not the one in control. And when we allow ourselves to release the reins of everything that is happening right now in our reality, I think that is one of the places that spiritual life brings us, and that spiritual life encourages, that we are not driving the bus. We are not the one in charge. As an old and dear friend once said, we are not the general managers of the universe. Nobody hired us for that. We do not have that job description. In order to be able to release that mantle, we have to acknowledge that we didn't do everything. We didn't make the world the way it is. We didn't make our families the way they are. We didn't, create everything about our life. And for some of us, that can be really hard to let go of. And maybe that is some ego dominance and some control. I think there are lots of reasons why we do it. But being able to release that sense of our ultimate responsibility for everything, our authority and control over everything that happens in our lives, that makes some space for us. And so gratitude maybe we can be grateful for ourselves, for things that we have done in our life. We can feel a sense of gratitude towards our past good judgment, good acts. And also, most gratitude is externally directed. And a prayer of gratitude is directed towards that great mystery, towards something beyond which we can actually understand or formulate a thought around. And the only way of relating to that superhuman energy is with something other than rational thought. So gratitude as a feeling, as a felt sense, is one of the ways that we cultivate a connection with spirit or the universe or God or nature, whatever we might call it. The gratitude that, there are worms crawling around in the earth and digesting things and repurposing, that there are tiny microbes that are in the soil that are feeding and constantly reshaping and shifting the soil so that it can be nourishing to the food that we are growing, that we are all eating, that we are dependent on in order for us to survive. Nature continues to provide for us over and over again. Finding a way to cultivate a sense of appreciation for that. Appreciating, again, with the day that this episode will release on Thanksgiving in the United States, that we have an appreciation for all of the hands that were required, all of the people and beings that were required for our bodies to be nourished. If we are meat eaters, we say a deep prayer of gratitude for the beings that sacrificed themselves they didn't choose it, but those that were sacrificed for our survival. We have a deep sense of appreciation for the wide network of people who grew the food, who produced all of the equipment that was required, all of the plows and the backhoes, and all of the hard toil and labor that was out in the field to dig up all those potatoes and process them, and all of the truck drivers and all of the folks who harvest in the field, especially this time of year and especially in this moment in time. We are so grateful for all those who work hard, who sacrifice their physical well-being, because labor on a farm is no joke. Our deep gratitude for those folks who, without knowing us, are willing to make that sacrifice for our survival and well-being. For every hand, every person who, stocked a shelf or a farmer's market, everybody who checked us out, everybody who, was any part of that chain for us to be able to have, these meals that represent the harvest season, represent the abundance that is available from our own work and our own effort, and also from the earth, right? We do it every year, and so it gets rote, and sometimes that rote practice loses its meaning. That's why, to me, it was so important to release this episode today. So being able to offer that gratitude externally, right, to people other than us, the people who, maybe you were the one cooking the food, maybe not. Maybe you were cooking and somebody else is doing the dishes. You can have appreciation for that. Whatever it may be, we have this sense of, oh, I am not doing it all. Other folks, other beings are directly involved in the rich tapestry of my life. And without them, I wouldn't be here. So there's a reason the gratitude practice is so emphasized. It's doing a whole lot of different things. It's a lot of heavy lifts. So number one, it takes us out of our ego self, that we have to be the ones in charge. We are always doing everything. It is a specific acknowledgement that we didn't do it all. Number one. Number two, it connects us to other beings. It puts us in relationship, and that relationship is the thing that feeds us, and in most ways is the thing that allows us to be our full selves. That we are hardwired to be in relationship with others. We are hardwired to strive for belonging. We are driven, all of us, to be in service, to be in relationship with other people. And so there being other people is a requirement, right? So gratitude is one of the ways that we create, honor, and cement the relationship that we have with people and beings known and unknown. But the next thing for me, and maybe the most underappreciated aspect of a gratitude practice, is gratitude makes space around things. It makes space around experience and around belongings and around meals and around families and around heartache. I mean, it gratitude acts sort of like an inhale, right? It's like a little bit of an inflation. So there's some room for things, both to move around and change, but also for them to have some mystery around them. So what do I mean by making space? When I have been in the depths of the hardest parts of my life, there is a sense of gratitude, sometimes that comes naturally, but that often I had to consciously cultivate. So the best example I can give anybody for this ever is in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. New Orleans had been forcibly evacuated for something like 6 weeks, and it was a slow return. So this is the thing nobody tells you, that if you weren't living here at the time, you really can't fathom how long it takes to rebuild things like supply lines and supply chains, and that there are enough people to do the work and all of that. So as a result of this, when you first came back to New Orleans, let's say October of 2025. So at this point, we're talking like 2 months after the storm, or even November, let's say Thanksgiving 2025. You were lucky to find a gas station that was open past 5 p.m. Most gas stations were still not open yet. Same thing was true for grocery stores. Grocery store just had what it had. You were grateful there was anything there. Anytime you went to a grocery store and it was open and there were people in there working, it was a miracle. Most restaurants, some restaurants didn't reopen immediately. The ones that opened, if they could find the staff, they used paper plates and disposable cutlery for months. And my suspicion in hindsight is not because the water wasn't there, but because they didn't have dishwashers. They didn't have the labor to do that. What was the minimum viable service that could be provided? Every time a stoplight started working, because I will tell you, the vast majority of the traffic lights did not work for months. We all got really skilled at a four-way stop. So when a traffic light would come back online, it was, people would like throw a party. And so by the time, I will tell you, we came around to Mardi Gras of 2006, so that's now like 4, almost 5 months after the storm. Mardi Gras was like a sense of pure ecstasy, of the profound celebration for celebration's sake, as an affirmation of our humanity and our capacity to do something other than just survive, which is what most of us had been doing up until that point. That sense of gratitude, it was like a constant vibration of how thankful everyone was all the time for all of these tiny things they had taken for granted up until that point. And my suspicion, and what I have heard from other people who have survived that level of disaster, is it's a similar energy, that every person you see, every service, every tiny detail that maybe in the past you would have taken for granted is now the most miraculous thing, and it's like a treasure, and you are just so like it creates a physical sensation every single time. In our personal lives, I think that gratitude also serves a really tremendous benefit when we go through moments like that, when we go through moments of personal disaster, right? And that's what I will call them. And unfortunately, each of you listening has probably had an experience of personal disaster where like everything you thought you knew fell apart, the bottom dropped out, you lost your job, or your heart was broken, or someone very dear to you passed away, or the list unfortunately is quite long of what those personal disasters look like. And in those moments, gratitude is not a cure. It creates space for us to have an experience of life that is not only suffering. When we are in the depths of heartache and loss and really deep grief, those feelings of despair and devastation can feel all-encompassing. There is a sensation like we are being pulled underwater, and the only thing we will do is drown. And in that moment, gratitude doesn't even always provide a life raft, to be honest. It just makes our world, it has a little inflation, a little inhale around all of that heavy, dark feeling so that we can have a fuller experience of being alive. After my dad passed away and I was going through a tremendous amount of grief that was related to that and also adjacent to that, I kept a daily gratitude journal. And in some ways, going back and rereading that journal is one of the most painful things I can do, because I will tell you that right now, I am not, thankfully, in the depths of grief. I am not keeping a daily gratitude journal. But doing that practice in that moment was a lifeline. It was a reminder that I needed regular reminders that there were good things in my life too. So gratitude cannot cure grief, but it makes some space around the grief for a few really tender, precious moments for us to be able to fully inhale and have a wider experience of our life. And then what I think of as the advanced practice of gratitude, which I think is a really, really important one, is a practice of gratitude for the things we do not want. So what do I mean by that? When something really disappointing or frustrating happens, so a client project you've worked really hard on or a proposal you've worked really hard on that you don't win, finding space for gratitude that you lost the proposal. You just start with like, I am grateful that didn't work out. And you allow yourself to find the splinters of truth around that. You allow yourself to have an experience that something not going the way you want it to go might actually be a gift, might be a good option. And it helps us to unknit our constant brain obsession with how bad everything is. I remember having an experience like this, and it's not an intellectual exercise. And I really want to emphasize that because I was in a relationship and something really unfortunate happened in the relationship, and I was pretty upset about it. And I had this experience of like, okay, if I were grateful for this, what, why am I grateful? And not in like a because it, builds character bullshit kind of way, because that's always true, but like good stuff builds character too. And like, frankly, I would pick the good stuff. But in that moment, this very difficult thing happening inside of the relationship actually demonstrated to me the depth of care I had for this person and how important the relationship was to me because I was so hurt. And I was able to then hold both of those things at the same time, right? I was allowed to expand into the paradox of heartbreak, which requires a sense of deep awareness of how extraordinary feelings of love are and also how painful heartbreak can be. That so that it's not just the heartbreak. We are able to expand into the full nuanced experience of a full and rich human life. The last thing that I will say about gratitude is as an anchor, as a place to move from, it dramatically impacts our quality of life and our relationships with other people. So what do I mean by that? In the episode about making meaning, we talked about the stories that we tell ourselves and our point of view. And every single one of us has a worldview. We have like a perspective based on where we are about, how the culture we grew up in and family and all of those things. And as a result of that, and also partially just, our own internal conditioning, our own natural default, maybe, we each have a tendency to view the world through certain lenses. So some of us just by default are more pessimistic. Some of us are more optimistic. Some folks view the world through a lens of humor all the time. I don't think that there's one lens, honestly, that's better than another. But what I do know to be true is that we have a choice. It requires some practice to change the way that we are, like to sort of take off one lens and put on a new lens. When we can begin to see the world anchored from a point of view of gratitude, the way that we relate to what we have, the way that we relate to the relationships in our lives, and the way we relate to ourselves begins to change in ways that often can feel miraculous. That relationships that are otherwise strained or challenging or difficult can be enjoyable even. That situations in our professional life or our personal life or our situations around our health, both the situations might change, but the way that we experience them also changes. And look, in the end, I think that is why we all pursue spiritual life. I think we are pursuing spiritual life because we are looking to experience our existence in a different way. We're looking to experience our existence in a way that is more spacious, more expansive, and more transcendent. And if that is what you too are looking for, I would like to introduce you to a little gratitude practice now. So wherever you are, I want you to just make yourself comfortable. And if now is not the time for this, that's okay. Just press pause. You can come back to me anytime you like. But just begin to make yourself comfortable. You can keep your eyes open or you can close them. And just become aware of your body. We start with body awareness because all of our felt sense lives in the body. So maybe you notice that there's some tension or some tightness or You're sitting sort of awkwardly and you need to make yourself a little more comfortable. I invite you to do that now. Begin to notice your own breath, watching your inhales and your exhales. Feel the way that gravity works on your body, the pressure of your support, maybe if your feet are on the floor or you're sitting or standing. Just feeling the pushing up, that sensation of pressure in the legs and the feet, maybe the back. And notice your initial sensation in the body. You might feel kind of neutral. You might feel excited about what's coming today. You might feel already a little grateful when you reflect on the day so far. You might feel anxious or a little reticent about the things that are happening or uncertain. Just notice the quality of sensation in the body. Like, what is it like in there? Maybe you can allow yourself to be still enough through your sweet and tender breath to also feel the beating of your own heart. To feel that rhythmic pulse, maybe in the center of your chest, maybe in the sides of the neck or in the armpits. Maybe you can even feel pulsations in the tips of the fingers, or maybe down into the feet. You are not consciously making this heartbeat. Instead, 50, 60, 80 times a minute, that heart is circulating your lifeblood through your whole being. Never needing to be reminded, never needing help, just every day, all night, consistent, reliable. And if you are among the few people who are listening for whom that heart has not always been reliable, has not been consistent, or has needed help, you probably have a deeper connection to the gratitude of that heart working. See if you can begin to cultivate a felt sense of gratitude for the gift of this heart beating. And if that feels elusive, maybe find awareness of the heart beating in a being that you love, even if that being is an animal or maybe your child, or a dear friend. There is a heart working. If you find yourself becoming distracted, simply come back, coming back to a sense of deep appreciation and thankfulness. And then I want you to let that release itself on a breath. Inhale completely. And exhale, allow the mind to soften and clear. Allow the felt sense to realign to a sense of neutral, maybe. Now I want you to think about a person who has been meaningful to you in your life. Maybe they're in your life now, maybe long ago. Maybe a great teacher or a family member, a lover or a friend. It doesn't matter who you choose. But allow the first person that comes to your mind to be the person that you settle on. Maybe you have some memories that come through, some ideas or thoughts about them, their impact on your life. Maybe not all of their impact was completely positive. Maybe there was some pain in there too. If it's useful for you to say quietly in your mind, I am grateful for, try that and see if it helps you to connect to that felt sense, the feeling of gravity, feeling of gratitude in your life. Let the truth of that gratefulness just begin to grow on your breath. Let it be nuanced and full, maybe allowing it to evolve. You might think of reasons in your mind about why you are grateful for them, why that relationship inspires gratitude. But every time you think about it, allow yourself to also feel it. And notice the quality of sensation of gratitude in your body. And see if you can allow that sensation to continue to wash over you, breath by breath, as you start to return to the room that you're in. Maybe blinking your eyes open, aware of that sensation, that felt sense of gravity, of gratitude inside you. Aware of that felt sense of gratitude inside you, even in the space where you are now. As often as you can, as often as you like, I pray that you will return to this felt sense of deep appreciation and to allow that gratitude to serve as a filter through which you are listening and seeing and speaking, to allow your gratefulness to make space for you to have the fullest experience of your aliveness. I am so grateful for you, for the time and the energy and the attention that you share with me. And I wish you the most grateful of days. Thanks for tuning in, Curious Hearts. If this episode was useful, I hope you'll follow the show or leave a review or share it with somebody who you think needs it. And if you're craving support on your own spiritual path or seeking some meaningful work, you can find ways to work with me at veralester.com. Otherwise, until next time, please stay grounded in that curiosity that you've got and keep turning towards what matters. See y'all soon.